go there. So one thing that's always been on my bucket list for a while is sleep in a school overnight. Now I know that might sound strange because, well, I'm a college student, so don't I do that all the time? No, because on the bucket list I've made it so that colleges don't count. I wanted it to be an actual grade school. And the reason for this is just because I've always heard of like lock-ins and things, and for some reason those fascinated me, and I just thought it'd be the coolest thing to like sleep in a school. I'm weird. Unfortunately, because I'm no longer in grade school of any kind, that's kind of really hard to do now. Instead of trying to do it again, I'm actually just going to tell the story of when I did sleep in a school. The reason I slept in school was because of Hurricane Irma, which happened in 2017. And when this happened, we all had to evacuate, at least in my area we did. So your choices were to either go up north or go into a shelter. And we chose the shelter just because we waited too long to be able to make it up north because traffic was insane. This is totally off topic, but it's so cool that right here, there's just crabs everywhere in their little holes. Sometimes I do like Florida. Now, hurricanes are actually pretty common for Florida. And originally it wasn't gonna hit my area, it was gonna hit Miami, which is on the opposite side of the state. But then last second it curved and was gonna do a direct hit to my area. Now, normally we don't really panic about hurricane categories 1 through 3 because normally those aren't too bad. But when we were told that Irma was category 5, we felt we had to leave. Now, the only thing preventing us from getting up and going was, well, besides the insane traffic that was clogging up all highways, we didn't want to leave my grandparents, and my grandma had actually just gotten a neck injury, and we didn't want to just leave them here. So we decided that we weren't leaving unless they were leaving. The problem is that they didn't think it was necessary to leave, so we were just kind of stuck, not sure what to do. But then the night before we left to the shelter, which I think was only 2 days before the storm itself, my grandparents called us and they said, oh, by the way, we just left. We're already about 100 miles away from you. So at that point, we felt pretty bad about that because we're just like, okay, we decided we're not leaving without you, and then you just leave without telling us until you're already gone. So because of that, we decided we had to just go to a shelter. The closest one to us that allowed pets was an elementary school. And yeah, you can see where I'm going with the BLI here. When the shelter opened up, we left and got there at about 5 in the morning. We had air mattresses and we brought suitcases under the assumption that whatever we didn't bring, we might never see again. And when we got to the shelter, there were National Guardsmen and police everywhere. So soon we were all settled in the shelter. We had our air mattress blown up and we had claimed our spot inside the elementary school's cafeteria. People were starting to pile in. Unfortunately, in our area is where they put all of the like nursing home type people. And in the shelter, you can't really give specific care to certain people. Like, sure you can, but it's difficult. And yeah, we were just kind of feeling like we were entering a fallout vault. Just thinking, well, this is our home for a few days. In reality, we actually had no idea how long we'd be there, just because even if the storm passed and things, we didn't know if it would be too flooded for us to leave or too damaged for the roads so that we couldn't leave. But all we had to live off of for the next few days was some protein bars for bodybuilders and some other like snack foods like Cheez-Its and just cheese. Yeah, we were all quite hungry. There's a separate room in the shelter for pets. In terms of like day-to-day normal life in the shelter, there really wasn't much to do. Because when you're locked in an elementary school and there's no like real activities to do except to sort of like wander the halls, talk to your neighbors around you, do whatever you can to keep yourself entertained. Now, unfortunately, while there was Wi-Fi, it was elementary school Wi-Fi, so a lot of things were blocked. The internet was really slow when it wasn't blocked. You couldn't really like use Netflix or YouTube all that much. And I was starting college at the time, so I figured, okay, I'll just get ahead on work. No, that's because my school had shut down its servers to protect them in case the storm damaged them. So I couldn't actually do any work. So I was just really, really bored. Now, at one point on the first day of being there, this one guy had stood up and just started screaming religious stuff. He was screaming like God brought us here for a reason and all that kind of stuff. And while I won't get into like the religious beliefs part of that, it was a little obnoxious. We're all there stressed, worrying that our homes and everything we own might be gone. And this guy starts getting up and he's literally screaming. So eventually the National Guardsmen and police officers calmed him down and said, okay, we'll give you one classroom where you can sort of set up like a religious church type area. You can just sort of do your thing there so you're not bothering everyone. And that appeased him, and then things were all good again. Now, one of my friends decided to evacuate their house, but they hadn't left early enough. So I told them, hey, there's spots at my shelter that you could come to. So they did. That saved me in terms of entertainment, because geez, I was so bored. We basically just spent the whole time just sitting there and trying to entertain ourselves. Sometimes we'd walk the halls of the school, just sort of like people watch, but even then it's really depressing because everyone's just laying on sleeping bags and pillows on the floors of the school. It really did feel like the apocalypse was happening. But then came time to sleep. Amongst my parents and I, we had one air mattress that was meant for 2 people. After that, we also had 3 camping chairs that we put together to make a kind of bed. And you can imagine how comfortable that was. Since we were going to be there 3 nights, we figured, okay, we'll have 2 people on the air mattress and then we'll just rotate between who gets the camping chairs. To say the least, I got the camping chairs the first night. It was not fun. Yeah, you try setting up 3 camping chairs next to each other and all your only blankets and pillows is just one jacket. Yeah. To make matters worse, there were screaming babies and there was an old man that had dementia that started screaming at like 1 in the morning. I got like no sleep that night at all. Now, we were promised that food would be delivered the next day. So after I managed to fall asleep, I got woken up like 2 hours later because the food delivery was here. What does our delicious meal turn out to be? A bag of Doritos. Yes, for real, that was all we had. That was all we were given for the whole day. The provider of food was the local Sam's Club, and they either didn't have enough to give out like good stuff or only gave us snack food. Yeah, we were all really disappointed then. So at this point, the second day had officially begun. Day 2 of living in this elementary school. The school had filled up, there were no more people coming in to stay there. So they had closed the doors and announced no more people are coming, and if you go, you are not coming back. Because at this point the storm was getting a little closer, so they were getting uneasy about people coming and going. So I went back to basic day-to-day activities, which is just wander the halls, talk to my friends, occasionally go walk the dog. And when we were looking down the pet area, that's when we discovered that someone brought a hairless rat to the shelter. I'll put a picture up now, but that was just the funniest thing. We were sitting there just like, this thing looks like a nutsack. Yeah, there's weird people in this world. I'm weird. Might be a little wind noise, sorry about that. So yeah, later that day, on day 2, turns out there was a shipment of coffee, and you can imagine how much people freaked out going several days without coffee. There's a line of, I kid you not, it's gotta be like 200 people in line waiting for coffee just to get the tiniest cup of coffee. My parents included. Now, having a big line for coffee, that probably means you're standing there for multiple hours. Isn't as bad as you think, because you have to remember there's literally nothing to do there. So after most of these people had gotten their coffee, there was no more coffee to give out, so coffee was quickly becoming a precious commodity. So much so that I went back to my parents to hang out with them for a little bit, and it turns out my parents were using our Cheez-Its as currency. They were trading people Cheez-Its for a cup of coffee. They traded some Cheez-Its for some other stuff, and it was just the funniest thing. At one point, I took some Cheez-Its and traded it for a can of Coke, just because I'm more of a soda guy. Later that day, we found out that one of the residents that was staying in our shelter was actually a doctor. So he talked to the National Guardsmen, and he decided to set up one of the classrooms as sort of like a little clinic. Now we had some sort of like a doctor to sort of treat people when they felt something was wrong, or just sort of let people know what's going on. That was good. And then later that night, turns out someone had brought a guitar and they started playing their guitar, and when they did that, other people started to sing, and it turned out to just be one big giant guitar singing party, and that was actually pretty nice. We were all under so much stress knowing that everything we own might be gone, so everyone just taking the time to sing together was really nice. Video of that now. And since that was the night that we had all rotated and decided that I get the air mattress. Yes! After sleeping on those camping chairs for a night, the air mattress was just so nice that I just laid down and immediately fell asleep from stress exhaustion. So the next morning we woke up, and I actually didn't get woken up this time. I woke up around like 7-ish, and turns out we got another food shipment. So we were all excited, hoping this one would be better than the last one. Turns out it was donut holes. And while tasty, it's not nutritious. At this point, we were getting really hungry for something actually nutritious. And I'm sorry, but donut holes just don't fill you up. But besides that, this was now the third day, and since at this point the storm was almost on top of us, we were entering what was called lockdown, which basically means that no one leaves the building at all. Even if you have to walk here with a pet, too bad, no leaving the building. They have to just go in their crate. And of course, we weren't allowed to go near windows at all. On day 3, my friend and I, we were just hanging out again, and something funny happened. When we were all charging our stuff at once, we looked at the outlet and we realized there's like 15 phones plugged into this outlet to charge. I'm going to show it now. We thought this outlet was going to explode. It's the funniest thing. The reason we found that so funny was, well, because we're losers and nerds, but second of all, because that's just one of the most entertaining things there. Not much happened that day, except people were just sitting there getting a little bit more stressed because they knew the storm was actually here. The National Guardsmen and policemen were patrolling the halls, making sure there's no unrest. As on the second day, something I actually forgot to mention, was that 2 people got kicked out of the shelter for looting other people's stuff. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that happens in scenarios like this. So as the storm was actually hitting us then, the building was getting a little shaky, but not too bad. You could only really hear what was going on outside if you were closer to an exterior wall, which we weren't. But my friend was up on the 2nd floor near a window, so he could actually hear things. Now, if you've never been in a hurricane before, especially one such a high category like this one was, albeit Irma did drop like 2 or 3 categories by the time it actually reached us. When there's a Category 5 hurricane going on outside your house, it seriously sounds like a freight train is right outside your walls. I mean, it's really scary, actually. And then came the lights flickering. Yeah, we were all scared that the power would go out and then we'd be stuck without air conditioning in Florida in the dead of summer. Thankfully, schools actually have really strong power grids because the lights kept flickering several times. And one time the lights stayed out for about 10 seconds and people started legitimately screaming. But thankfully the power never went totally out. Nothing serious actually happened. There were no leaks in the building or real damage or anything. So nighttime came, everyone was watching the radar on their phones and tablets, and as the storm passed, people were cheering, saying the storm is now past, yay. At one point everyone in the cafeteria actually stood up and clapped. That was pretty cool. Now when it came time to go to bed, the next one of us in line for rotation for the camping chair bed decided I am not sleeping on that. So what we did instead was we all just piled together on the air mattress like a bunch of walruses. And believe it or not, it actually worked okay because we were all just so tired that we didn't care. Around, I think it was like 7 in the morning, the police decided that the damage was minimal enough so that we could leave. Like the flooding wasn't nearly as bad as they expected. So everyone just rushed out as fast as they could. Now let me tell you, when we left the shelter, it was like a ghost town here. There was nobody on the road. But then the best part of this all is when we got back to my house, there was no damage. My house didn't even lose power. Now of course we couldn't have known that would happen, but it would have been nice. Thus, we began the rebuilding process. And as many of those, oh, Hurricane Irma, we will rebuild memes that you might see that are just like one of those plastic chairs falling over, the rebuilding process was actually more substantial than you'd think. But it wasn't nearly as bad as some of the other towns like Naples or Fort Myers that got hammered. My school's main campus did actually get flooded, so I had no school for about 2 weeks after the hurricane, which was borderline annoying because I actually wanted to just progress and just get it over with. That is my story of living in the hurricane shelter for 3.5 days, I no, 3 days in the morning. And also the story of how I achieved the BLI of sleep in a school overnight, or over a couple nights, actually. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and if you want to suggest a BLI, make sure you try to put it in the format of BLI, and then your suggestion. That would be much appreciated, and I will see you in the next one.